The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able for the introduction to be introduced by Councilwoman Clear, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Lord, we ask you here this evening to be with us and help us remember not to be boastful, envious, or proud. Protect us from being rude, self-seeking, or easily angered. Teach us not to keep records of wrongs or to delight in evil. Show us the benefits of speaking the truth. Inspire us to spread peace, hope, and perseverance in helping others in our community and throughout the world. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no proclamations or presentations this evening, so we will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla. Here. Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon. Here.
There are no deletions or additions to the agenda, and the council is aware that there will be 3 executive sessions following the meeting this evening. The first item 4, appointments.
4 is a board appointment recommending the appointment of John Kirk to the Civil Service Commission to fill an unexpired term ending November 1, 2019.
And to our pleasure. Councilman Emerson moves to approve. Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. All those in favor, please vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the appointment is approved. I would like to introduce John Kirk, if you would stand, please. John is a budget analyst for the state of Kansas. He's also had experience working in counties and municipal government. Thank you for agreeing to serve on the Civil Service Commission. We'll proceed with the consent agenda. I recognize Councilwoman Clear.
I would request that we pull from the agenda B and add it to the action agenda.
All right. B has been pulled from the consent agenda, and we'll make it item E under the action items. If the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clear granting Brass Rail Tavern an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. B is added in the action items. C is denial of tort claims submitted on behalf of John Forsey, Janet Zobel, and Tim Deringer for $31,750 plus 10% interest accruing from August 17, 2016. D are minutes of the regular meeting of September 19, 2017, and there's a list of applications, and staff is seeking approval.
It is a consent agenda. Councilman De La Isla moves to approve. Councilman Jensen seconds. There's no discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read. We proceed with the action items. And Council, we have 4 public hearings in our action items this evening. The clerk would read.
A is a public hearing and an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber establishing a community improvement district, CID, for the project at 240 Southeast 29th Street, levying a CID sales tax of 1% within the CID.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As the body will recall, we had a presentation on this issue several meetings ago, and I'm pleased to point out in the audience again this evening are Pat and Trent from the development project, and I'm sure they'd be glad to come up and answer questions as if the council has any.
All right.
What you have in your packet is a resolution calling for a public hearing as well as establishing a CID district at the location that the clerk noted. Most of us know it as the location of the old Kmart. Also in the packet is the development agreement between the City of Topeka and the developer of this project. And rather than go through that development agreement line by line, just a couple of highlights from the agreement would include in Section 1, there is a maximum reimbursement to the developer of $900,000. Section 5 reiterates that this is a pay-as-you-go project, meaning the city is not issuing any kind of bonds for the project. It's a project that will finance itself as it moves along. The CID will begin on January 1st of 2018, so here in just a couple of months. And then Section 14 notes that the developer must have the project complete by the end of 2019, December 31st, 2019, and that the developer must spend a minimum of $2 million in private project costs. So that's kind of a synopsis of those development highlights. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Are there questions, comments? Seeing none. Councilwoman Claire
I'd move to approve.
moves to approve. Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. There is a public hearing. Thank you. We're moving along here, but it's good to stop. To take action on this requires a public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on behalf of this item, please come to the podium and do so. This is the public hearing. Seeing none coming before us. The public hearing is closed. We have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Trent Overhue, would you stand? Is here. Would you stand, please? We want to acknowledge is the developer. Thank you. We appreciate working with you. Look forward to this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Go to item B.
B is a public hearing and an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber continuing the 2013 to 2017 neighborhood revitalization plan for an additional year.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. With this item is, as you noted, one of our 4 public hearings this evening, so we'll have our second of the public hearings tonight. As the body knows, we've had a number of discussions on this item dating back to earlier this year, and staff's recommendation continues to be that we extend the program for 1 year. So at this point, the program expires at the end of 2017. We would recommend that we extend it for 1 year or through 2018, and that will allow us time to sync up the health map data and incorporate some of the suggestions that have been made by the body and bring back to you then next year a longer-term plan. Some of those suggestions, of course, would include expanding the boundaries and to potentially different neighborhoods and maybe incorporating different health levels into the map and not just those neighborhoods that are in intensive care. Mr. Finder will also come up and make a brief overview, and then we can stand for any kind of questions you might have.
Mr. Finder.
Thank you. Good evening. The only thing I would probably add to that is the process itself. If this is approved tonight, when we still have to go out to the 6, 7 different taxing entities and get their approval and have an interlocal agreement between the city and those taxing entities. And we will at that time be able to solicit the comments from them as well, use that and your comments as a basis then to as the interim city manager said, come back probably at the end of the first quarter next year and begin this process for a longer term plan. So,
Are there questions? Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. So I guess I'm not understanding why you all didn't bring us a proposal to expand the district now. I thought we discussed that last time at length, and we're told that would be brought back. Is there a particular reason why?
Not now. It'll be brought back, but not now.
Yeah.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, that was discussed. As we indicated at that time, we wanted to look into the legalities of it. And Bill and his staff did end up looking at some of that, but rather than bring back something arbitrary, we wanted to make it data-based And then, like, as noted, we want to take the rest of, or part of 2018 to be able to come back with you with a plan that's more fleshed out rather than try to rush it, given the fact that Bill and his staff still have to go to seven different taxing entities by the end of the year and get this completed.
So this would be something that they would do then in next year when we are looking at this again with the new data.
Mr. Mayor, that would be our intent, to sync up that data better next year.
So we're basically doing twice as much work as we would normally have to do if we just didn't do it once the first time. I mean, I understand we don't have the neighborhood health data, but that doesn't preclude us from having some of those conversations now, as opposed to having to repeat the process again in 2018. So, I mean, I'm happy to support extending this, but the goal was not to spend a ton of taxpayer money doing this twice. And I understand that there are some components that aren't prepared this time, like the neighborhood health data and that sort of thing. But if you're going to go out and hold meetings with all these other governmental entities, I would assume we do that once rather than, because everyone's time costs money. We're going to have to pay for that twice for you all to go out and have twice as many meetings. And I just can't support that. So I'm disappointed that that information wasn't brought this time, but this program is crucial to these areas and more in the community. So I would hope that next time this comes up, we have all the information we need to do this correctly. Thank you.
Okay, is there other discussion? Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just don't understand why we have to use the old outdated health maps. I really don't. Because I don't understand how we can plan with those if they're going to change. And we still are going to use that, is that correct?
The Councilwoman Ortiz, the health map is from 2011 that we're using for this program. The 2014 health map was the one that's been updated the most recently. So as I said last time, we have two choices. We either use the 2014 and knowing we're going to change that in another year anyway, or we continue for a year and do it once and do it when we update the map next year in 2018.
Who's supposed to update the map?
That's my staff, my department would do the updates.
And how often do we do it?
We do it every 3 years, 3 to 4 years in the past, but this would be a 3-year update, and that's probably the cycle we would be on from here on out.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you.
Aye.
Are there other questions and discussion? Okay, this requires a public hearing. We will now open the public hearing, and to speak on this is, first I recognize Jackie Steele.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Steele. I'm the Vice President of Business Retention and Expansion for Topeka, and I'm here tonight to speak in support of both the program as well as extending it 1 year so that we can align it with the updated Healthy Neighborhoods map. So as the business retention and expansion person, so the person who's out talking with our existing businesses, this is one of my favorite programs. And when I started thinking about why I like this program so much, I thought there's 2 reasons I really love this program. Well, wait, there's 3 reasons. Well, there's 4 reasons. So I kept crossing off my number. So when I got to 4, I kind of stopped. But there's 4 reasons that I really love this program. It fills a gap. It focuses on areas that need to be revitalized. It's simplicity. And also, when it comes to year 11, there's no tax surprises. So in terms of filling the incentive gaps, we certainly have incentives that we can offer for a lot of companies. Now, when you're talking about an existing company, a lot of times they're not building a brand new facility. They're doing an expansion. Mm-hmm. And so when they do that expansion, they don't spend enough to qualify or to justify paying for bond counsel, going through the process to do an industrial revenue bond or to do an EDX to get that tax abatement. Because you need to have at least about $3 million in construction to really make those numbers work to get your return on investment. So this program helps fill that gap for those companies that are investing in our community and that have been here, and yet it provides them an opportunity to potentially get some tax benefit as well. As I said, it also focuses on areas that need redevelopment. I mean, ultimately, our goal should be that as a community, we say all of our neighborhoods are so great that we don't even need a neighborhood revitalization program because we don't need to incent that extra development. We're not there yet.
So we do need the neighborhood revitalization program. And that's what this does, is it helps focus that development and that capital investment in areas that really need it most. What I also really like is its simplicity. So as I said before, you don't have to hire a bond counsel. You don't have to go through this whole process that you don't understand. Because if you're a business owner, you're probably not spending every day talking about how do I get a tax abatement if I'm looking at doing this program, but I need some assistance to fill the gap. This is a very simple program. They simply fill out the form, they complete their construction project, they pay their taxes, and then they get a rebate. And that's what brings me to the fourth item, is what I love is this is a rebate program. So those companies are used to paying their taxes. So they're paying that every year and they're getting a check back, as opposed to an industrial revenue bond, which is still a great tool for economic development. But oftentimes in year 11, companies get to year 11 and say, whoa, how much are my taxes? Whereas with the neighborhood revitalization program, they've been paying those taxes, and so they're used to that. So that's just kind of my overview of why I really like this program, especially from an existing business standpoint, is it really gives us another tool to offer to them. And then finally, in terms of extending this program for 1 year, when I started talking with Bill about it and kind of looking at some of the data that I've been gathering from our existing businesses, we need something to help guide us of where should these boundaries be? Because as I said, we want to focus it. And so I think it just makes sense to align, if that map's going to be updated every 3 years, let's have our neighborhood revitalization program update every 3 years, so we have something to help us establish those boundaries.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Vince Fry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Vince Fry, President of Downtown Topeka Incorporated. I'm here tonight to support the extension of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Obviously, I think it's a great tool, an incentive for areas that are at risk and in need of development. Certainly, downtown has taken advantage of this. According to the documents that you received tonight, I think there's been $366 million invested in these areas through the redevelopment program. I personally bought a building 20 years ago in an area that is defined in this at-risk area, and I can tell you we wouldn't have invested and spent the money that we did had it not been for this program. We got the rebate for 10 years. On the 11th year, we were paying a significant amount of additional taxes that are benefiting these taxing entities. It's a great program, and I would certainly ask that you consider extending it for another year.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. This is a public hearing. Anyone else in the audience may speak on the issue. Anyone may speak. Seeing none coming forth, we declare that the public hearing is complete. Is there your Councilman De Lisa?
Motion for approval.
Moves to approve the ordinance. Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. Any discussion? Councilwoman Hiller.
I just wanted to make a brief comment since the conferees have talked about businesses, is that this is really a great tool for neighborhoods. I've got one neighborhood in my district right now that's doing its sort neighborhood planning, and others either have or will. One of the things we talked about, it seems like a long time, 6 months ago, we talked about this before, was that it wasn't used as much for residential as it was for businesses, and that we needed to focus on marketing it a little more and educating our neighborhood folks. And we're not going to be able to spend government money or get grants to do the infill housing and the major rehab that we need through our neighborhoods. So I hope we haven't forgotten that as the time has passed, and that neighborhood relations and those of us that have older neighborhoods can work together and look at some ways to make sure we've promoted that to our citizens who are residents in the districts, because that'll cover redevelopment, new housing and infill lots, as well as major renovations. So I'm certainly supportive.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the ordinance on the neighborhood revitalization plan is passed. We go to item C.
C C is a public hearing continued from the meeting of September 12, 2017, to consider the adoption of a tax increment financing TIF project plan for the Wheatfield Village TIF redevelopment district located near Southwest 29th Street and Fairlawn Road.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. A couple of brief comments before I turn it over to those folks who are going to do most of the speaking. The only action, by way of a sort of a housekeeping note, the only action we are requesting tonight from the body is to open this public hearing, to listen to the presentations, have a robust discussion, and then continue the public hearing until November 14th. So that's the only request that's on the table with this. We want to begin tonight with having Mr. Feinder come forward, and he is going to visit with the body about the Planning Commission agenda for this project, how that went. He'll talk about the zoning, the PUD, and just generally give a recap of the issue from the Planning Department's perspective. And then after that, we will call the Wheatfield team up, and they'll make some presentations regarding some additional project details and specifically focusing on traffic issues, because I know that's on a lot of people's minds. So unless there's any questions of me, I'll turn it over to Mr. Feinder.
Seeing none, we're ready.
Thank you once again. As the interim city manager indicated, I'm just going to summarize the PUD proposal that came before the Planning Commission so you know what they considered and what they recommended. And that will set the table, I think, for further discussion on the details of the development itself. But for starters, the property itself actually is zoned for heavy commercial, C4, which allows almost all of the uses that are going on here being proposed. The one thing that is, but because it's a mixed-use project, there's a multiple family use element, as well as some setback and parking variances. It did have to go through the rezoning process and go through a PUD. So I just want to kind of start off with that piece. The PUD itself that was presented to the Planning Commission had very specifically about 383,000 square feet of development that was entitled through that PUD. And it broke down into the things that you've seen. For instance, under phase 1, you have a two-tenant restaurant building. You also have a movie theater. So that's phase 1, and there's a certain amount of seats that go in there and a certain amount of square footage with each one of those. But the names of the developments are not; those aren't part of the PUD. It's just the use category and the size and scope. Then phase 2, you also have 3 other buildings, a hotel, 88-room hotel, an apartment complex of 178 units, and a parking garage of 188 spaces, a family dining restaurant, and then a farmer's market as well on the site. The site itself...
That's not what he meant.
Let's see.
Sure.
The site itself is actually, much of it, I don't know if you've seen this, much of it is in the floodplain. That dark shaded area that kind of wraps, looks like it's eating the site. I just noticed that. What we're pointing out here is that there are some definite costs to raise the land and do some grading and preparation for the site to raise that up to a minimum flood elevation level, so none of the buildings will be below that. So that is a fairly significant point here as we went through. The site itself, there are a couple of things. Parking, we did look at, there's probably a more of a conservative parking ratio here because it is a mixed use, because there will be shared parking, and so the rate is a little bit lower just because we're going to have some trips within the site itself, people walking, people biking as well, and which this site is connected to our trail system. Signage, there's 2 Actually, there's 4 overall signs on the perimeter that you would see that were recommended, and you would see 2 on Fairlawn. The best I could, instead of giving you a number, they're monument signs, but if you know the sign at the Academy on Wanamaker there across from Dick's, that new sign, that tall sign, that's about what was approved as part of the PUD. And then you also have a fairly taller sign along the interstate, 50-foot high, that resembles what you would see when you resembles the old Chicago sign along I-470, that tall sign. So that gives you hopefully some idea in your head and visual. Landscaping is extensive on the site. It's been mentioned before, there will be a nice 30-inch landscape berm along Fairlawn to screen the parking areas and have a nice curb appeal. The big issues that came up were obviously the traffic and access. There's 2 access points along Fairlawn, and then there's a 3rd access point off of 29th and I-470 on-ramp that is a conditional access point. It must be approved by KDOT and Federal Highways. So that is approved as part of the PUD, but obviously that couldn't take place or be constructed until they sign off on that at the state and Fed level. So in terms of traffic, what we required was a traffic impact study, and that traffic impact study was done by the developer and approved by City of Topeka and our traffic engineer. And as part of that, it does require improvements to be made to accommodate the increase in traffic to this area so that we don't have a negative impact on the levels of service here. So it is so as part of the development, during phase 1, that'd be the first 2 buildings, Fairlawn improvements would have to be done before there could be a certificate of occupancy issued for those 2 buildings. So those improvements on Fairlawn would be a traffic signal at 28th and Fairlawn, and a left turn lane going into the main entry of the site. And then also dual left turn lanes coming southbound onto 29th Street. So those improvements have to be made before phase 1 can be occupied. When we get to phase 2, then they'll have to pick up some improvements on 29th Street as well. And there's 2 options there depending on whether the break-in access is approved or not. So those improvements have to be made prior to occupancy for the 3 remaining buildings for phase 2. And as I mentioned, that pretty much summarizes, I think, the key points that the Planning Commission reviewed during their deliberations. You're going to see a little more detail what they saw with some very tiny cars here soon. That you'll see what the Planning Commission saw, and I think that's kind of important. So with that, Planning Commission did recommend approval by unanimous vote, 7-0. There was a late arrival, so there was 1 abstention. So if there's
Okay, are there questions? Are there questions for Mr. Finder? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Bill, did you send us a copy of the traffic study?
Traffic study should be in the notice, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Send us a link. Yes.
Councilman Jensen.
Do you have timelines for phase 1 and phase 2?
I don't think that's outlined in the necessarily the PUD, but I think there'll be some folks to address that here.
That's all set. Thank you.
Councilman Clare.
I'm sure you probably answered this before. Is it the city's responsibility to make these street improvements before phase 1 and 2? Is it our money?
Gotcha. There will be some discussion about the participation, if you will, but at this point, as is typical, any development, when there's an impact, we do require the developer to pick up the improvement cost. But as we go through this process, I think you'll hear more about that and how that works. Yeah.
Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz?
I have one more question. Parking garage, this says eligible project costs, parking garage improvement cost. There's not a parking garage, so how can we do an improvement on something that we don't have?
Councilwoman Ortiz, there is a parking garage planned, and as part of the site plan for the apartments building, the apartments would wrap around that, so there is a multi-level parking garage planned for the site with that.
But there's not one existing right now, right?
There's not, no.
That's how I'm looking at that, okay. So what improvements will this be if we don't have a parking garage?
I think, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, maybe just to clarify, that's a private parking garage, so it won't be anything that the city constructs. It's a part of the developer project. So it won't be a parking garage like we think of them downtown. It'll be a developer's garage.
Well, when I think of that's what the TIF cost is going to pay for, am I reading this right? It says TIF cost categories include, and we don't have a garage there, but it has improvements. I'm just not understanding that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Parking garages are an eligible TIF expense, and so I think that's why that is in there, yes. So that it just qualifies as an eligible project expense, the garage itself.
Are there other questions? Okay, thank you. You want to introduce our guest?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I believe Bob Johnson is going to come up for the Wheatfield team and kick it off for them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thanks, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Doug. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm appearing on behalf of the developer tonight, 29 Fairlawn LLC, represented by its principal, Jim Klossman, who will get up here in a minute and speak to the project and several particular elements of it. Also representing the developer would be their general counsel, Jennifer Sork. Other members from our project team are here tonight as well that can speak to areas in their expertise and answer in particular questions you might have. Greg Schwert from Schwert Design Group, the architects, Kevin Holland from Cook, Flatt, and Strobel Engineers, Drake Development represented by Matt Pennington and Ian Mooseman, and our traffic consultant and engineer Jeff Wilkie, who, as Bill referenced, will give a traffic simulation showing the different traffic public improvement scenarios. I will briefly run through some things that we've talked about before, but I think it bears repeating to kind of set the stage here. Here's the location of the development site, obviously fronting I-470 to the west, highly visible site along that highway frontage there. Southeast corner, or rather the northwest corner to the southeast is Fairlawn Road and 29th Street intersection. As you know, and we've discussed extensively in the past, this is a very dilapidated, deteriorated site. It has been obviously in decline for many decades. It's increased in vacancy over many, many years, and today is in dire need of redevelopment and certainly cannot be repurposed in its current use. Bill ran through the site plan here, but I'll do it again very briefly just to show kind of the location of each of the uses that he mentioned. In the northwest corner, that's the multifamily dwelling building with the parking garage right in the middle. It's kind of, or to the southwest middle of the site there. Frankly, it's what you consider a wrap style apartment, which is kind of the modern mixed use approach, whereby the apartment would wrap around an internal structured parking garage that would be utilized by the residents there. As Bill also referenced, that allows parking ability for those residents on a tight site. We have a challenge here that we've got a small site that we're making multiple uses work on. As you know, there has been extensive land planning to make these uses fit harmoniously on the site. They do with that parking garage there, and they work. And we can park the site with that garage there with the shared parking as you see in the parking field. As I said, the land planning was meticulously thought through. What are the uses that are going to work in concert together? That apartment building, the hotel to the north, the movie theater there to the south of the hotel, kind of in the center of the site, as you see. Moving eastward, there's the primary drive aisle coming through the middle with a bit of a central promenade with some landscaping. And then to the east of that, you have the two restaurant buildings. One, the one to the north has two tenants anticipated to be located there, a fast casual restaurant and a coffee shop. To the south, there is a sit-down dining restaurant, and then the farmer's market referred to as is southeast of that in the southeast corner of the site. This is a new concept that we're bringing to the market that truly is the modern mixed-use, new urbanism, walkable style development. It's a unique development to the market. The market concepts have been vetted as able to be, born within the market. They're market concepts that work in concert together. We think people will stay at the hotel and come eat at the restaurants, come see a movie. Same with apartment residents. They will walk over, see a movie, eat dinner, get their morning coffee. As I said, all of the uses were well thought through to work in concert together and bring not just a one-off, but a bucket of things that all are making a place, if you will, as opposed to, attempting to stand alone. They all work in concert. All told, this is expected to be a redevelopment of $93 million. Certainly, those costs will include public improvement costs referenced by Bill. I want to walk through again what those improvements will be. As Bill said, extensive work with Trans Systems, Jeff Wilkie, who is unimpeachably premier traffic consultant in the region, worked hand in glove with the city staff to develop a traffic impact analysis and public improvements that would work for the site, that would absolutely not lead to negative traffic impacts from the site and from the traffic to be generated from the site. That obviously is the starting point. You cannot negatively impact traffic at a location I think we all recognize today has some challenges with regard to queuing at that intersection. So to address those issues, as Bill stated, on Fairlawn Road, you can see there to the east of the site, there would be several requirements. First of all, the traffic signal installation at 28th and Fairlawn, allowing for safe turning movements into the site and to sites across the street, beneficial to multiple property owners and to, really truly a regional, for the use of that word in that region there, improving the traffic flow for properties on the east and the west. Maintaining that existing southbound left turn lane, and then constructing a northbound left turn lane and a new raised median, again, for safety concerns, to allow left turn traffic into the site. Down as you move south to 29th and Fairlawn, there will be a second leftbound turn lane moving eastbound on 29th Street. Obviously, that is for purposes of servicing the volume of traffic that will be traveling south on that movement. And as I stated, and as Bill did as well, this creates acceptable levels of service for all intersections and turning movements within the study area. As you can see on this particular slide, this represents improvements to 29th Street in the case that the break-in access is granted. The break-in access request has been made to the Kansas Department of Transportation. They issued comments back to the developer. The developer has answered those comments. They're being reviewed by Kansas Department of Transportation with the consideration of then moving to the next step, which would be the Federal Highways Administration. In the event that break-in access is granted, the improvements to 29th Street would include extending the existing eastbound left turn lane at the I-470 and 29th Street intersection there for additional capacity, making sure that any cars making that eastbound movement on 29th Street, moving towards the break-in access and moving towards the entrance ramp on I-470, have the requisite queuing ability to sit there in that turn lane and have the capacity to service the amount of traffic that would be there and is there today. Moving to the next option, this is the 29th. This represents 29th Street improvements in the case that the break-in access was not granted. In that case, it would require a second eastbound turn lane on 29th Street, moving eastbound, turning left onto Fairlawn Road. That would require further capacity west of the I-470 and 29th Street intersection in the same area that we pointed to a minute ago with regard to the break-in access improvements. This is just additive of the left-bound turn lane on 29th Street and moving on to Fairlawn Road. This slide merely represents what Bill already spoke to, which is the Fairlawn improvements are phase one, tied to a certain square footage in our planning commission approval. As Bill said, any additional square footage being built out would trigger the commencement of 29th Street improvements. At this point, I'd like to bring Jeff up and talk through the traffic simulations that he utilized in working with the city to create the traffic improvements.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Wilkie from Trans Systems Corporation, and we have some simulations here. I know some of the technical staff was working on getting these loaded up for us, so we'll hopefully get to see those here now. Yeah, so this is a simulation that's made out of it's called the synchro analysis program that we use to generate our capacity analysis. So the tool that tells us how intersections are operating. We're looking at traffic counts here that were collected in the field. This is the PM peak hour, so during the evening time frame. So generally between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock PM, we find that peak hour, and these are the counts from that time. And this is simulating how the traffic would operate. And the reason for this, beyond just our capacity analysis, is we find out with our capacity analysis a little bit about how the intersection is projected to operate as an isolated intersection. But given the tight spacings of some of these signalized intersections, it's important to look at them all together. And so that's what we did here to make sure that we don't have the queuing issues going on that would queue back between adjacent signals. That's the real concern that we have. So this situation we're looking at here, this is going to be the first model we loaded up. This is the situation with PM peak hour with the phase one of the Wheatfield Village development traffic added in. So this has those improvements that Mr. Johnson, Mr. Fiander were talking about. This is the Fairlawn improvements is what we're seeing here. So we're seeing some queuing in several approaches, southbound Fairlawn, but not back through adjacent signals. We also have some queuing today, northbound Fairlawn before 29th. So similar issues that we see.
Have a question?
I'm doing my best here, but it's small.
Yes.
How much development is done in the Wheatfield development in this picture?
This is the phase one picture.
Okay. So that means just the restaurant?
Or excuse me, I'm sorry. This is the one with this is full development, excuse me. This is full development with the break-in access. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So that has, you can see there is the driveway coming off the ramp there. For that westbound I-470 entrance ramp, it shows that driveway there allowing that access.
Okay. Do you have another question, Councilman Emerson?
Yeah, thank you. Is this, this looks like it's faster than real time, correct? It's
Yes, we play it fast.
Okay.
This is, I think this is 4 times regular speed is what we do to make sure that we can give you a snippet here to look at, so.
Can we see it, is it available in real time if we want to look at that, or to kind of get an idea?
I haven't brought that information with me here tonight, but
Is that something you could send us, though?
we could probably get that to you. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Jensen?
Well, if these guys are going 4 times over the speed limit, I expect the police would be thrilled with that. Jesting aside, so does this assume all the traffic signals are linked and working cooperatively?
This does, yes. We're able
Okay.
to interconnect them through the program here. We can't simulate the exact system that's out there today because it's the traffic adaptive system that runs through the interchange area, so it's changing the signal timings on the fly through a lot of this area. So we can't exactly simulate
Okay.
that because that signal controller company has a proprietary formula that they use to time those, but
So our signals now over there are working collectively?
think that-
Councilman, I'm looking to our traffic engineer, and he's nodding yes, so the answer is yes.
And when you describe what adaptive is,
Yeah, adaptive means it's the signal timings are changing in real time. So the cameras are counting the traffic as it's coming through the intersection, and they're making adjustments. They're keeping track of different flows, and they even keep track of historical flows through the area for the past several days to know how to change that cycle to optimize flow. So we have 3 scenarios I brought with us tonight, so there should be another one here. We also can simulate this scenario. Yes, this is our without the break-in access. You see the driveway is not provided from the I-470 westbound ramp. So this is full development of the Wheatfield site without the break-in access. So this would have the full Fairlawn improvements and the full 29th Street improvements, including the dual eastbound left turns at 29th and Fairlawn. So we see queues are not, again, backing up between intersections. We have some long queues at times, but generally satisfactory. And queues are clearing in one signal cycle.
Okay.
Councilman Hiller?
What is the estimate of how many vehicles would, and I don't know what time frame you use, but would go in and out per minute or per hour or whatever from the Wheatfield's development?
From the Wheatfield site, I can look it up in my study real fast here. We looked at both the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour. So those are the critical time periods to traffic flow. We found that if we can satisfy traffic during both those peak hours, it's going to work most likely during all other times of day as well. What we found total in the AM peak hour, the site would generate 442 trips. That's both in and out, so 203 in, 238 out. In the PM peak hour.
And in an hour?
In an hour in the AM. In the PM peak hour, we're generating 600 total trips, 309 in and 291 out. So very balanced flow with the mixed use. So that's good to see. And then we also have one more simulation, the phase 1.
Okay, wait, one other question. Councilman Jensen.
Sorry, so will this change the rating of the intersections? We use A, B, C, D, E, or F to grade them. Will this increase that at all, or just keep it where it is and increase capacity?
With the improvements, we're increasing capacity, so when we increase the capacity, we're able to keep those levels of service at an acceptable level.
So it'll still be poor, but it'll be able to handle more.
There are some level of service Ds out there in that area today, is what we found in our existing condition.
Okay.
We'll be at D or better.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So this is the phase 1 development scenario here. So just phase 1 of Wheatfield with the Fairlawn Road improvements. So again, some queuing occurs, as does today, but we're not backing up between intersections. And that's critical because that's when we usually see a lot of crash issues could occur when we start queuing between intersections. That's where you start to see your cycle failures.
Well, I'd like to have your general thoughts on the traffic here. You do studies like this for new developments in many cities, all size cities. Mm-hmm. And I know you're totally independent in your opinion, your professional opinion. Well, how do you describe it? How appropriate, how difficult is it going to be with these changes that are made?
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, what I do like about the plan specifically from a traffic standpoint is the balanced flow. A lot of times we'll see a development that will be heavy office or heavy residential, and that has some hard peaking characteristics. The nice thing about the mix of uses is you get a good balance here. It's not uncommon to see the commercial like this near an interchange. We deal with this quite a bit. The interchange, the existing signal spacings are tight, but I think we've accommodated that, and I think we found that it can flow acceptably. We feel good about it with the not queuing between intersections. That's really what we're looking for a lot of, and also making sure queues are contained within turn bays. So we also don't like to see those queues spilling out of turn bays. And I think we can accommodate that here is what we're seeing from our analysis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your presentation. Other questions? Okay. Councilman Hiller?
One more.
Sure.
I see that you're installing a pretty good-sized barrier down the middle of Fair Lawn. If somebody, I had a call from someone who was talking about residents there just getting across Fair Lawn, either 28th to 28th where it jogs, or I'm looking at this, I think it's right across, just to the east of that barrier is the road that goes in and services a residential development and a nursing home and so on. How do you get across the street if you wanted to go there?
The vehicular crossing
Correct.
Fair Lawn?
Well, or walking or biking
walking.
or whatever, actually.
28th Street will be a full access signalized intersection. So it would be the Wheatfield entrance there at Fair Lawn and 28th.
And that's the northernmost?
That's the northern access point, the northernmost of the two Wheatfield access points. The northern one will be fully signalized. And so a signal there would have all your pedestrian accommodations. So you'd have crosswalks, push buttons, pedestrian indications and such. So that's a great pedestrian crossing. In fact, the only other pedestrian crossing right there in that section of Fair Lawn that I would encourage as a traffic engineer would be 29th. So your two signalized intersections are your best places to cross through there for sure, given the volume. For vehicles, the same at 28th, you can get across there. Actually, with our median on Fair Lawn, we haven't changed the access to anybody, to any existing properties there. The median will be a barrier for the south Wheatfield driveway on Fair Lawn. It will limit that driveway to right turns only, so there won't be left turns in and out of that driveway there. So it's too close to those signals to allow full access. And then we've made a median brake accommodation. If you look a little further south of that south Wheatfield driveway, there's a small break in the median to allow access to an existing development who's on that east side of the road.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
I'm going to move to the TIF and CID incentive request tied to the public hearings tonight. I'll mention that we're giving the presentation here during the TIF public hearing. Next agenda item is the CID public hearing. We won't replicate that. We certainly, obviously, will be here to answer any questions during that session as well, but I'll speak to the TIF and the CID here combined in the TIF public hearing. What you're seeing here is the boundaries of both Project Area 1 for the tax increment financing district that has been created and the boundaries of the proposed community improvement district. As you know, the boundaries of the TIF district extend to encompass some of the properties east of Fair Lawn. Those are outside of this Project Area 1. Project Area 1, the project plan that we're bringing before you now, is only for the Wheatfield Village. As you see, there's some adjacent right-of-way here, given the public road improvements, but there aren't any other parcels owned by any other property owners within Project Area 1. And I'll explain how that ties into the incentives that would be generated within the area. Same with the CID district. Coterminous with the TIF Project Area 1 boundaries does not encompass any of the properties east of Fair Lawn that are not owned by 29 Fair Lawn LLC. There are three very important things at the outset about the request for the TIF and the CID economic development incentives here. First of all, they're pay-as-you-go, as Doug mentioned previously. That means there are no bonds requested. If what we project will be produced in revenues by the Wheatfield Village project does not come to fruition, or it's something less, that's the risk that would be borne by the developer. We're not asking the city to issue any bonds, whether backed by the city or not, no bonds whatsoever. So the pay-as-you-go means as we generate it from our development only, it would be there to be reimbursed for statutorily eligible costs. I think that's an important point for this development. It's something we've heard from folks to want to make sure to make that distinction. Secondly, kind of spoke to this already, but really drive it home here, it is the increment on top of what's there today in the project area that would be used for statutorily eligible costs to redevelop the blighted site. So the property taxes, the sales taxes generated when the district was formed will not be captured as part of what we would be capturing to reimburse for statutorily eligible costs. Those are revenues that would continue to go to the taxing jurisdictions as they have today. Moving to the CID, same point to be made here. There would be no CID sales tax associated with any other development other than the Wheatfield Village. It would be only the components that we would be developing that would have a CID sales tax associated with them. Moving to the specifics of our estimates. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the estimated project cost is just over $93 million. The TIF and CID incentives generated from those pay-as-you-go methods, as I just explained, we project total roughly $15.6 million net present value. The private investment thereby would be $77.6 million estimated today. Again, if those levels of incentives are not generated, that risk is borne by the developer, not the city. That leads to a 16.7% incentive to private ratio, as you can see there. And as I mentioned before, those incentives would be utilized to reimburse statutorily eligible project costs. And what do I mean by that? Eligible costs for reimbursement are dictated by statute. Both the TIF and the CID statute contain specified eligible costs that are legally able to be reimbursed. As you can see here, the TIF statute excludes vertical development except for parking garages to be reimbursed through TIF revenues. The CID statute allows vertical costs to be eligible costs. And the TIF categories include categories to set the table to remediate the blight. I think it's important to really emphasize what the purpose of TIF financing is, and that's to prevent and remediate blight, to redevelop property and create economic development spurned from something that has been blighted or is descending into blight. I stand here today to say that this is the poster child for that project, for that purpose, for that statute. This is what this was created for. We've got a site that has been dormant, has been deteriorating, is in horrible condition today. I think we all realize that, and it's at an important point in the city. It's a highly visible site, and because of the challenges associated with that blight and the need to clear the table and then set it for the buildings to be developed on top of it, economic development incentives are necessary to accomplish that. This is the truly best example for TIF that I've seen. And I think that when you look at the eligible costs, you can see how that comes to fruition. What we'd be looking at reimbursing for TIF would include public road improvements we've already talked about, demolition and site work to set the table, parking garage improvements to create that mixed-use environment, enable us to park the project, enable us to bring a wrap-style apartment project first to the market, and the acquisition cost to acquire that property and bring the project to fruition. At this point, I'd like to invite Jim up to speak to his vision for the project, the need for economic development incentives here, and the market positioning of the project.
Sure, thanks, Bob, and good evening. Jim Klossman, 4425 Southwest Stony Brook, Topeka. I live within about 2 miles of this project. Much like many of you, you've probably driven by this project many, many times and just shake your head thinking, why does this look so bad? And I think I said at the last meeting that our original office for Midwest Health was located in this complex, and that was probably 35 years ago. Even then, it was in decline, but it was a operating complex. They had a bowling alley there. They had a few offices there, a couple restaurants. There was a gas station on the corner. So one time, this did generate traffic, regardless of what we're doing right now. So in terms of what we're doing, it's adding traffic, but there had been traffic at this location prior to us ever owning it. I will note, too, that once we bought this property out of foreclosure, that our property taxes doubled overnight. So actually, we're paying more taxes now since we bought the property, and there's nothing going on than was paid before. So we have added to the tax basis for Topeka. But this project is a large project. We had 3 goals in mind. The first goal was that let's clean this project up. I mean, this thing is a mess. It looks terrible. I think what we're showing here this evening really complements what our actions will be in that. The second was to bring something unique to Topeka, and I'll explain a little bit about that, but this mixed-use product is one that we've seen in Kansas City, we've seen in other cities we've gone to that really excites us in terms of being able to live, work, and play in one area and walk it. And we will see the same thing in downtown Topeka, where we own a number of properties down there too and plan to redevelop. But for this spot, this really made a lot of sense for us to put a denser product here. And by going denser, it got way more expensive than it would be if we had a regular big box. And let me tell you that when we bought the property, we had about 4 different users that called us and said, can we buy this from you? And one was a large national supermarket chain. And we said, look, we don't want just another supermarket here with a lot of expansive parking. That's not what we envisioned for this property. Another was a used car lot, a national used car lot maker that wanted to buy the property. Again, we said, that's not what we want for Topeka. Storage units on the back, again, not what we wanted for this location. I think what we're putting in this location is outstanding. We're very excited about the development, about the people that we've been able to bring in. And going back to that, the third thing was to bring local and regional players into this, which we've done. We went to Kansas City and talked to people there. We talked to restaurants in Lawrence. We talked to people that we know here in Topeka, PTs, and we brought Spin in here. We brought Johnny's in here. We brought B&B Theaters in here. So it's not a national chain. We wanted to feel like it's part of Topeka, that will energize Topeka, that'll be someplace where people do want to live, that they'll want to be able to walk over to the coffee shop, that they'll want to be able to eat at Johnny's and watch the game on Monday night. So that's really what our vision was. But it comes at a price. I did read the article in the paper and I believe Dr. Burns here tonight from Washburn, that this doesn't really meet the criteria for TIF. I have to admit that when I went to Washburn, I took an economics class, and I got a C in that class. So besides that, I've been able to put a business together that's been fairly successful. And the first thing I learned was you don't go broke. And this kind of project really says that we need your help. I could have done a $5 or $10 million project in here and made a profit on it and been on our way, and it really not been anything that anybody could get excited about in Topeka. But our main thing is this really is a large investment for us. And we're looking to the city to say, help us in this. We're not asking you for taxpayer money to put into it right now. All we're saying is that the taxes we're paying right now, if nothing happened, it'd be the same 20 years from now. You'd still be getting whatever is on that piece of ground that's existing. We're saying that there's extraordinary costs that are involved with this project. You've heard about them earlier, the traffic, we have to build up the property, we have to demolish the buildings. All those are costs that make this impossible for this type of development. Again, if we don't get that, we would go back to the drawing board and we'd find a national supermarket or somebody like that to go in here. That's not what we want. I don't think that's what you want. I think this is something that Topeka can be extremely proud of, that'll be here for another 40 or 50 years. Instead of when you're driving by right now, you'll be driving in. So hope you support us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions, comments that you have? Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you,
How many
Mayor.
questions do you have?
Just one.
Okay.
I'll try to.
Unless
try to
it takes
answer
a while. We've talked before about this, and I think the questions that people have are they want to see how much the investments will be in those eligible project costs compared to how much the TIF would return, or the TIF and the SID. Do you or someone here today, can you itemize for us how much the public road improvement costs would be? The demo
Bob
site
may
work?
be able to do that better than I can.
Okay.
I think all the costs that are associated with would have to be eligible costs. We just can't start making up costs in any of this.
Right, absolutely.
They have
That's
to be,
why. If we
eligible.
can just itemize those 4 categories, so
And a
we
lot of
know.
that is still in the process because we don't know yet how much it would cost to put all the traffic infrastructure in. We don't know yet exactly what all we're going to find on the property once we start demolishing the buildings. There's remediation in those buildings right now. There are a number of factors there that will go toward paying for those costs. Building up the property itself, there's going to be a cost involved with that. We don't have a line item yet because we haven't really gone out to have the bids done yet to start that part of it. We're fairly confident that we put what the cost will be reasonable costs within there. And what we're asking for through the TIF and the CID is really, I think Bob said around 16 to 17% of the total project. We're putting in close to $80 million of our own money in terms of borrowing money from local banks, being able to get this thing done. So I don't have the exact numbers on each component. They will be coming out as we progress with the project. And again, this is all contingent on us being able to work with you to get the TIF and the CID. If that doesn't occur, we have a whole different project in the future.
I think, you've obviously done something to come up with the $93.2 million project
Sure, I'll let Bob speak to that.
Okay.
Well, any other questions for me? 'Cause
Yeah, Councilman
And then I'll let Bob
Jensen.
speak to
Thank
that.
you. Can you talk about your approximate timetables for Phase 1, Phase 2?
Sure. So as soon as, hopefully, the council approves this, and we're hopefully confident that that'll happen, we will start demolition on that this fall, winter, on the property itself, with the first phase of the project starting in the spring of next year. So really, the first phase they're talking about is principally the restaurants and the theater, and the hotel, I think, will be right in there, too. The component that will take the longest is the apartments, because that has to be done. Greg Schwartz is a little bit slow sometimes, so. Yeah, I know. But that's really the component that takes the longest, is to do a set of plans for a project this large. And that can be almost 9 months or more to just do the plans and then take it out to bid and to build it. There's probably going to be another year and a half on the apartment side. So that will be the last phase of this whole project. But certainly, by this time next year, we hope you're having a beer at Johnny's.
That's impressive.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim, for your presentation. Bob?
Councilwoman Hiller and other council members, I will just walk through the cost estimates that have been done today. Obviously, these have been done by our project engineers, our architects, our general contractor, and vetted across ways in many meetings to get to this point of estimations. Jim is right. Obviously, these are estimates. We need to take these costs to bid. You never know what they're going to cost. All I know is they're going to go up, frankly. I mean, construction costs are going up. That is a certainty here in this market. But I will kind of run through at a high level what these buckets are and what we've estimated today. So the land acquisition was $2.375 million. The site work, including the roads, just over about $10.2 million. And that's inclusive of the demolition that's necessary to get this done as well. The building improvement costs are approximately $75 million. And then you have a whole host of soft costs that would add up to approximately $5.6 million as well. So with regard to the TIF, as I said, the eligible cost would be for what we'd call horizontal component of the project. You can't go vertical except for parking garages. With TIF revenues, so eligible costs for TIF are all of those site costs, road costs, things of that nature. CID costs, as Jim alluded to, that's within the statutory framework, very flexible, allowing vertical costs and those horizontal costs as eligible expenses associated with the CID.
I'm trying to grab them so we can match it up.
Okay.
In your parking garage, then, you didn't itemize.
Sure.
Maybe
The parking garage
I'm missing
was
it.
inclusive of the building costs, that's $5.9 million estimated today.
Okay. That's where I was going with it. I was trying to just draw it out in that if the site and roads are 10.1 million,
Right.
the parking garage is 5.9 million. That adds up easily in my head, that's good. And the real property acquisition costs are 2.375. Then what we've got is 19.3 total of eligible costs in your estimates, and an estimate that the TIF and CID together would be 15.6. So you would still have skin in the game.
No question about it. We have
Wherever it goes from there.
very significant skin, obviously, in the game. As I mentioned earlier, 78% of these costs will be equity and borrowed money by Jim. To your point, though, it's an important point. There are many more eligible costs than we project we would generate in incentives. No question about that.
That's what I was trying to get.
Got it?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, yeah, Councilwoman Claire.
Okay, you're going to have to dumb this down a little bit here. I've been really listening really hard. You said something about the sales tax will still be there for what's there now?
That's right.
What's there now?
Well, where's Nikki? We are doing a calculation based upon when the district was formed, there were tenants there at that time. So those tenants are gone today.
Right.
But when the district was formed, there was sales tax being generated out of that district there. The statute allows you to not have a base sales tax, but we have agreed that we will provide a base sales tax so that the sales that were existing when the district was formed, we are not going to be asking for that amount of money, that sales tax that was there at that point, to be captured for reimbursable costs.
Okay, I got that. What's the benefit to the city for this development?
Great question. Economic development, number one. A site that's been blighted for decades. So you've got a project that was not generating, they're generating very little in taxes, generating no trips to Topeka. You're going to bring economic development to the city. And I believe we've got somebody here from the chamber tonight who has prepared an independent analysis of us that will speak to the economic impact from a jobs perspective, from other dollars that will flow in ancillary to the Wheatfield dollars that would come back to the developer. So you first and foremost have a site that's been in not doing anything for the city, not bringing people here to visit and eat in the restaurants. In fact, allowing leakage to other communities as they would go to Lawrence or other places to visit a Spin Pizza or a PT's Coffee. So you're now keeping those dollars in Topeka. You're producing economic development that will spur other economic development. I think you'll hear the chamber speak to that, and will spur over time vastly more property and sales taxes for the city than have been there historically or there now.
How long over time?
Yeah, the TIF project plan is 20 years, pay as you go, and the CID project plan is 22 years, pay as you go as well.
So besides economic development, the taxes won't benefit us for about 22 years?
The increased taxes from Wheatfield will not, correct.
And what do you expect those to be? How much is that?
How much tax revenue? I would have to look at the numbers to see. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly, but we could easily run those projections and speak to that at the continued public hearing.
Okay, and one more. I'm not sure I heard who's funding the streets. So, I mean, I heard your number. Does that mean, is that the total cost?
Yeah. Doug, do you want to speak to that?
I can. Sure. Councilwoman, Mr. Mayor, that's a point of discussion right now. Certainly, it's a project eligible cost. As you know, the developer has taken their TGT request off the table. In an exchange, we've had conversations with them about lessening the project contribution to the street improvements.
Do you know what that total cost would be?
Councilwoman, nothing has been designed yet at this point, so we don't have a good idea of what those would be.
You know, one point with that, though, that is a bad intersection right now that improvements need to be made. And if there is no development, the city still needs to have some improvements. Would you want to just comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I should have stated that originally as well. In our conversations with the developer, we acknowledge that we have acceptable service levels right now, as noted by the traffic engineer, but anybody who drives through that intersection knows that we need to do something in terms of improvements. And so we recognize that part of the onus is on the city to make those improvements with or without this project. And so we feel comfortable suggesting some sort of cost share with the road improvements.
So the improvements that were done, how many years ago was that improved over there?
Mr. Crowder?
2009.
Good. Very good.
Wow. So, so we needed more at that time, or we just kind of put a Band-Aid? Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Councilman Jensen.
So while we're discussing streets, I don't know anyone that finds that intersection acceptable in any capacity now. I appreciate that what's being proposed will not make it worse, but it's certainly not going to make it better. So obviously, it's not the developer's responsibility to do that, but if we're going to bring a dump truck over and proceed to work on the intersection, would it not be in our best interest as the city to try and improve above and beyond what the developer would need to do while we have equipment and people over there tearing up the street?
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, we were ironically having this conversation right as we walked in. What ultimately improvements need to happen there. And at some point, I'm going to ask Terry Coder, our traffic engineer, to come up because he can give you a more thorough explanation. But suffice it to say that what needs to happen probably isn't affordable. I mean, I'll just be very direct about it. The entire intersection needs to be resigned, and I think folks knew that in 2009 and have known it for a while. But at this point, I'll have Terry come forward and he can give you some more specific details. He likes to
Mr. Crowder
do public speaking, so.
Does the Mr. Coder and does the street design work, oversees the engineering for all of our streets.
Hi, I'm Terry Coder. I'm the city traffic engineer. I've been your city traffic engineer for a couple of years now, but I'm very familiar with this intersection. Questions? Or okay. I'll give a little history on the intersection and where I think we need to go. Is that what?
I think that's appropriate, Terry. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the intersection was I-470 was under construction. I have an aerial photo in 1959. It was under construction. And, of course, 29th and Fairlawn was out in the middle of pastures at that time. And, you know, the area's grown. And the primary issue with the interchange is that it's too close to the intersection. So if you were to redo this thing completely and just rethink this completely, what can I do to fix 29th and Fairlawn? It'd be move I-70 a quarter mile, half mile away from the intersection so that all the closely spaced intersections wouldn't exist. Well, that's not going to happen. But I think long term, what really needs to happen here is that in 2009, I'll go back to 2009. 2009, I think we had the project in 2009. That was a federal aid safety project that was 90% federal fund to address crash problems that were occurring in the queue of traffic on 29th Street approaching Fairlawn. And it was also for the purpose of addressing the queue of traffic from Fairlawn back up onto I-470. And traffic may queue through some of the intersections down on 29th and connect now occasionally during peak hours. But we do not any longer, to the best of my knowledge and belief, queue traffic back up onto the I-470 main line. That project started out as a $1 million project. We tried to do it for $2 million. And I think that's about the range we're in. Those are not rock solid numbers. Those are numbers I remember from 8 years ago. But that was about the scope of that project. So that project, I think, was effective because it addressed those concerns. The Connect Road works essentially as a left turn lane for northbound Fairlawn. That 2 lanes on Connect Road is essentially a left turn storage bay for the northbound Fairlawn Road to westbound westbound 29th Street movement. So that's what that project was about. And we knew at the time we were doing that, it was way underfunded. We left ugly medians in. We had patching that was done. We left bad pavement in. We tried to connect into some other projects to get some sales tax money into it somehow to do some pavement repairs, but it was just underfunded to do more than that. This is, we have our most traffic in the city right here. And I think long-term, what we've got to do is just add more through lanes. Right now, we've got 2 through lanes in each direction. And if we added an additional through lane in each direction, you'd be getting about 40% more traffic. 50% more, if I have 2 lanes, I add 1, I have 3. That's a 50% increase. But traffic doesn't work that way because people don't use the lanes that way. So you'd get about a 40% increase in the volume of traffic you could get through there if we added additional lanes, east and west, north and south through the intersection. The problem is, what do you do with those lanes once you get past the interchange and want to transition back down into 4 lanes? We need to go at least a quarter of a mile. First, because you set up a drag race scenario leaving. If you had three lanes at the traffic signal, you're going to transition to 5 lanes or 2 lanes. You set up this drag race scenario, and code says about a quarter mile is what I need for that drag race, So we have to be continuing this widening from Fairlawn on to the east about a quarter mile. To the west is where that's really problematic because we've got the Shunganunga Creek Bridge, and it's narrow. And we've got narrow lanes on past there, so we'd be looking at, when we put those 6 lanes through there, the additional 3 lanes westbound and the additional 3 lanes eastbound through there, we're going to be looking at widening the bridge also. So this is not a small project. This is a pretty good-sized, very expensive project. And I know there's some projects programmed for the future, but that's really what right now, we're just doing Band-Aids, and we'll continue to do Band-Aids until we get a big enough project to add, lanes.
Good. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
Gives us a big picture. Okay, we'll get back to Wheatfields. We better, any other questions? We need to start on public hearing,
Just a quick question for him.
Okay, I'm sorry. You have a quick, Mr. Crowder, question?
Sorry about that. So my quick question is the improvements we're doing today setting us up for success in the long run when we have to spend the billions of dollars to do that?
We would be wanting to build pavement where we're building today now. Okay. So there's no pavement we would be throwing away.
Excellent.
We'd be probably tying into existing pavement that needs to be replaced, but there's no work that would happen with this project that would impact the other project negatively.
So we'd retain these lanes when we add the additional ones?
Right.
Okay.
The 29th Street improvements, every improvement you hear talks about widening. So we're adding pavement, so that's a good thing.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So there's nothing here that's...
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll go then to the public hearing. We've had 7 people who did sign up to speak, and then we will have it open for anyone else in the room to come forward and speak. Since we have a number of speakers, we ask that we always say we'll say 2 people, the second one to speak. If you would especially get out of the row and come up close to the front so we can move quite rapidly through this because it does take some time. Each speaker gets 4 minutes. The green light comes on when you speak, and when the white light comes on and there's a ding, that means you have 1 minute left to wrap up, finish, and then when the red light goes on, you have to quit. So that's sort of the parameters that we use. First speaker is Bob Fletcher, to be followed by Sean Frost.
Can I speak in this, or can I?
Yes.
Just like this?
Yeah, just like that's fine. You don't have to bend over. It should be enough that you could just speak.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and I thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to talk here. I've never talked in front of the City Council, and I consider it an honor. Give you a little bit of my background. I've lived in Topeka my whole life. Went to Seaman High School, went to Washburn. I'm a CPA by trade. I worked as a CFO for Valley's for 10 years. Owned by some guys in California, bought Luth Valley out. A guy named Ron Burkle ended up selling everything to Kroger. And he became the largest shareholder of Kroger. Left there, started at Sunflower Bank on location in Wanamaker. Mr. Klossman was a landlord. Sunflower Bank opened a location in Topeka. Left Sunflower Bank, and now I work for Capital City Bank. I've known Jim since my Valley's days. I've done a lot of business with him. Jim works a lot with the local banks. He can go to any bank he wants to. He can go to U.S. Bank. He can go to Bank of America. He can go to Wells Fargo, but he chooses to use Topeka banks, which I think says a lot to his character and his integrity. You know, Jim's lived the majority of his life here in Topeka, growing up in Valley Falls, so I've had a long relationship with him, done 5 or 6 loans, tens of millions of dollars. Everything's been handled as agreed to. Excellent person to work with. Probably one of the top customers in Northeast Kansas, at least in my opinion. My Valley's was sold to Associate Grocers in 1998. Some of my best friends are the grocery guys in Kansas City. Associate Grocers, about a $10 billion wholesaler, 4th or 5th largest in the country. Ball family, Constantino, McKeevers, a guy named Barry Queen. I'm very active, do a lot of business in Kansas City. Barry Queen is working on a large TIF project as we speak right now in Lawrence. Some of you may be aware, some of you may not be aware. His CFO is Dennis Riley. He's a good friend of mine. I've been very active in their negotiations, helped them get a letter of intent on a $30 million TIF project. And they're looking to put a grocery store in downtown Lawrence, which is very similar to the Constantino store, which is down by the Sprint Center. So that's what they're trying to do in Lawrence. Blighted area, not blighted area, but they're trying to bring a grocery store to downtown Lawrence. Barry Queen, I don't know why you name your kid Barry Queen. His sister may be Dairy Queen, I don't know. But I don't know why you name your kid Barry, but very bad joke. But he's also working on a TIF project in Fort Scott, Kansas. I've also worked on some other TIF projects in Kansas City with the Balls and the Constantino family. Some of these are blighted areas, some of these are not blighted areas. You know, being a longtime Topeka person, 20th and Fairlawn is, in my opinion, it's an eyesore to a certain degree, especially with Topeka wanting to go to the next level. You guys got a tough vote here, what you want to do with this development, but I think the person you're talking to, Mr. Eaton, who I run around with, my wife and I run around with him and his wife, these are high integrity people who know what they're doing. Topeka projects, you know, some of the TIF projects you've done here, I think you've done a TIF project downtown for the hotel here, which is a blighted area. I think you've done one, Sid, or a TIF out there with Academy Sports. I think the city's had some bad luck with the racetrack, had some bad luck. One thing Jim and Butch is doing, they're not asking for any money in their pocket. They're putting all their money at risk. Some of these other projects, a lot of them I've seen have been funded with bonds. Jim and Butch are not asking for any money, not asking for bonds, not asking for a city guarantee, not asking for any of that stuff.
Thank you.
I see my time's getting close here, so Jim and I have a lot of contact. He contacted me early on. He told me one national chain was interested for a grocery store. Told him I wasn't the right one. He told me the dealership was interested. That's probably not the right one. I had Barry Queen.
Okay, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Sean Frost to be followed by Ty Heiston.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sean Frost, and as you can tell by my abundance of hair and lack of grays, I am a young professional. Part of my job in Topeka is to visit with alumni across the country. And a lot of these alumni were eager to get out of Topeka as fast as they could. And I really want to see that change. I think we've got a real opportunity in front of us here. With the Momentum 2022 plan, there was a feasibility, or there was a study that was put on by Market Street, and 40% of the jobs in Topeka that pay over $40,000 do not live within town. And so I want that to sit with you guys for a little bit. This is an opportunity. Wheatfield Village put something in front of us that allows us to have a site for people to see on the way coming in. I'm the chair of the Young Professionals Organization, Forge. Fast forward, before us started an internship program, and we now run this internship program. They saw the Wheatfield Village plans, and they were excited. And so with this decision, whenever you end up making a choice on this, young professionals are going to be looking to see what you guys are saying to them, because this is a real opportunity to have people appreciated. And we need to be an importer of young people for our economic future. Because this is just the kind of thing, the mixed-use space is what I see my friends in Atlanta moving to. They move to those areas because they can walk to the places that they want to be. It's a livable area, and I think this is just a really exciting opportunity for us. So I just want to say that, we always talk about this is a place to live, work, and play. And I want this to be a place where young people can live and play. This is something that when we go to other companies in town, they say, where can our people live? And we want to point them in a direction that suits their needs. So thank you all for your time, and appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Ty Heiston, to be followed by Freddie Majin.
Thank you. It's Ty Heiston.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. I am the co-chair of Forge, and so I'll be chair for 2018 coming up. So I like to focus on two things. One is talent. Access to talent, top talent, starts with attracting that talent here to Topeka. According to a 2013 survey of the nation's fastest growing companies, access to talent was the most frequently cited factor in determining where to locate your companies. Okay, so that was from the International Economic Development Council. I think of talent as a pie, whatever your pie would be. You could pick cherry, you could pick apple. Fall's coming up, so pumpkin pie is my favorite. The bigger that talent pool is, that talent pie is, equals more pieces for the community to take part in. Okay, so among 25 and 35-year-olds with college degrees, 2/3 look for a job after they choose a community where they want to live. So that first thing is choosing that community. Oddly enough, you'll have new people coming into town, and that's what they look for. They want to see the sights, the sounds, the smells of Topeka, and everything else. I drink the same water, we breathe the same air here in town, and we need projects that are like this. Okay, so lastly, young professionals make choices. This could be a good thing. We look at diversity of where we want to go, where we want to spend our money. We can jump on the Shunga Trail and have a break over at the Wheatfield Village. That break could be a coffee, it could be water, it could be, I don't know, maybe a beer. You never know. And so thank you for your time. Again, it's Ty Heiston, and have a fun evening.
Thank you for your comments. Freddie Majin, to be followed by Connor England.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak tonight. My name is Freddie Majin, and I work for Go Topeka as a research manager. I would like to provide you with some information in regards to the Wheatfield Village project. Using a reputable input and output model, I was able to determine an estimated economic impact for the project. I used two main variables to determine these. One was the first-time construction cost, and second, I used the yearly output of each projected business. So at your request, I can provide you with all the underlying assumptions that I did to model these. But in general, the construction alone would generate a total economic impact of approximately $152 million. This comes from the $90.8 million construction, for which it would support roughly 1,000 jobs with a labor income of roughly $73 million. Those 1,000 jobs include those direct construction jobs carpenters, electricians, engineers, architects, but also includes induced and indirect jobs from other type of industries, such as hospitals, restaurants, hotels, and other type of services. Now, the operations for all the businesses combined would generate economic impact of roughly $20 million yearly. So this is the big difference between the one-time construction impact versus the operations. This is expected to occur every year if they operate at an optimal level. These would support 203 jobs and with a labor income of $5.5 million. Another factor that I would like to consider is the total demand in the city and Shawnee County. And there are certain goods and services that exceed what local businesses can provide. This sometimes is due to people's preference, but this is also sometimes due to a lack of choices or product differentiation. So this means that our citizens are acquiring these goods and services from outside the city and the county. So, for example, I determined the people's spending pattern, and I was able to aggregate those spending patterns based on specific commodities. So the data shows that, for example, in the commodity of motion pictures and videos, there's a total demand for $15.5 million in 1 year, for which 3.8 it's met locally. The same thing with full-service restaurants. About 150 million is demanded, for which 87 it's made locally. All other foods, drinking places, 50 million demanded, 47 made locally. So the data shows that there is a potential for the type of businesses from the project that could meet people's demand, attract new money to the region, reduce possible leakage to other cities and to other counties, thus creating real and potential positive economic impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. And you said that you would have the material available?
I have all the underlying assumptions that I did to create the model, yes.
Okay, so we could have those?
Yes.
We could have those available to us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next is Connor England, to be followed by Paul Byrne.
Thank you, Council, Mayor Wilgass, for having me. My name is Connor England, and I'll be speaking to you tonight on the Wheatfield Village in two of my capacities. First is the Business Development Chairperson for Forge Young Professionals, and second, or the Topeka's leading organization for attracting and retaining young pros, and second as an executive officer of a young company that chose to headquarter here in Topeka. I feel that both of those perspectives are important and should be addressed. So first off, as chairperson of the business development pillar for Forge, I'm in constant contact with young professionals who chose Topeka as their home. Many of them enjoy their jobs and enjoy their organizations. However, most of those individuals are not defined by their jobs, and for many, their life away from work is where they find most of their meaning. Now, when they go home for the day, many leave town in search of entertainment due to a perceived lack of things to do in Topeka. Forge is hard at work creating entertaining programming that will attract and retain talent. That said, we see that whenever our calendar isn't filled, many Topekans end up skipping town and go straight to what I will refer to as anchor points. So anchor points are physical places with name recognition and strong positive connotations that become magnetic social hubs for a community in the areas around it. They're valuable because when a person thinks of going out to do something, they can simply pick one of those anchor points and know for certain that they're going to have a good time with the options available. Without anchor points towards which we can go to, like Mass Street in Lawrence, or Power and Light in Kansas City, or Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, Topekans will always answer the question, what should I do tonight or this weekend, with, well, I'll just leave town and go here instead. Now, quality of life is a principal concern for young professionals, and in our experience, it's not something that can be scheduled. It has to be built. This is the chief reason for the Wheatfield development, a potential anchor point that has been described by even surrounding communities as head and shoulders above anything else in the region. Forge believes that having options like this gives us a place with which we can go, we can take roots, we can be proud of that, and not only that, but we can convince friends and loved ones from other towns to travel to us, to live with us, for Topeka for a change. Now, second, I want to speak to you as an officer of a fast-growing company in town. Smart Save LLC, we went from concept to profitably operating in 3 states over the course of a year and are on track to be nationwide in the next 5 years, which means that before too long, we're going to be looking to hire. So the team believes in Topeka. We consider it home. We headquartered here. However, as much as I love and believe in my hometown, I'll be totally honest with you. In the last 30 days, I've been to Kansas City Power and Light twice. Spent 2 of my weekends up there watching movies at the Alamo Drafthouse, a dine-in theater with a kitchen and bar, much like the one here in the Wheatfield proposal. Now, I want you to sit on that for a second. If a leader in a company drives to another state to satisfy quality of life concerns, why would we ever expect our employees to stay here? If Topeka is truly going to get better, we have to lead by example and actively build the changes we wish to see. And I absolutely commend Jim Klossman and Butch Eaton for trying to do just that, and the entire Wheatfield team. I'm certain that if we had similar offerings to this, I would almost never leave. And not only that, but it would be much easier for me to recruit talent from other towns when I have something like Wheatfield to bring them to. As we grow, so does Topeka's economic base, making the return on investment for this development clear as day. Projects like this are the catalyst for economic prosperity, and while the specific development package might not be the most efficient, I would bet every dime that I have that incentives that were used to build the Pearl Streets and the Power and Lights probably weren't the best either, but they created an anchor point, a place in town that we could be proud of, that outsiders would crave, and just in a matter of years after completion, these projects made all the difference for their communities. Please know that young professionals and companies like mine are watching your decision tonight and looking to you to help make Topeka our first and only choice for living the quality lives we hope to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next is Paul Byrne, to be followed by Joe Charest.
My name is Paul Byrne. I'm an economist. Thank you, City Council and Mayor, for having me here to speak. I wrote an op-ed on Friday about the use of tax increment financing for this particular development, and one of the council members asked me to come in and just make a public statement. I don't speak for my employer. I'm an economist, and I'm just speaking for myself and as a resident of Topeka. One, I would like to say that I'm excited about the Wheatfield project. When I kind of heard about it first time, it sounds great. I'd love to go there. It sounds like a really good project. My only objection is, as I mentioned in the article, was the use of tax increment financing. So certainly, there's very little tax revenue being generated within the actual district that's been created now. And once the development takes place, there'll be a lot of taxes now coming. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the new tax revenue that moves into the district isn't tax revenue that the city wouldn't have access to. So I use the example in my article that if I go out and I spend $100 dining at some other location, and I see this development, I can sit and look along the Shunga Creek and maybe go for a walk afterwards, and I spend that money there. Well, that tax revenue that would have otherwise been being acquired by the city and the county and the other overlapping jurisdictions simply gets moved from one part of the city to another. So my emphasis is that TIF is often presented as something that doesn't cost us anything, because I could see why that's the case, because you look at the current property and you say, well, we're not generating a whole lot. But my emphasis is that it is going to cost you something, because a lot of that tax revenue that will be created within this development would have otherwise occurred somewhere else within the city. And up until recently, I didn't see a whole lot of information until today about what development costs are going to be reimbursable. It seems like some of the city council members weren't really sure. And there's a lot of abuse of TIF. And that doesn't mean that this TIF is going to be abused. I was doing some research on Missouri TIFs over the summer, and I was looking over a 5-year period, and one of the TIF districts I was looking at disappeared because they did it for 3 years, they paid off what they were going to pay off, and they dissolved the TIF district. But there's lots of cases where TIF lasts for 20 years, and it's almost like an open-ended kind of blank check just goes over and over, and a lot of money could ultimately be lost from the city. So I encourage you to think about this as whatever commitment you make, to go with it with eyes open and know what costs you're going to be giving up. Just like the developers, they want to know what are our costs going to be and what are our benefits going to be. So I would encourage the city council to the same thing. I got some emails from members asking me about CID. CID has some similar characteristics to TIF, but I don't have any objection to CID because you'll still have access to, not you exclusively, but the overlapping jurisdictions would still get the $9 or so per $100. So CID is different. I don't have any objections to CID. The issue that Ty and Connor and some other people, I know Bill had sent me an email recently talking about, well, if we can get more young people to move into Topeka or to stay in Topeka, absolutely. I mean, that's if you can do it, that's a great thing. But then it just adds the question of, is this development going to be successful at doing that? And if it is, that's great. But some of it is still going to be shifted from other areas, and you should take that into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Joe Charest.
Greetings, City Council members and Mayor. I am speaking as a parent with a child in the school district that this development is wanting to go into. My son attends Topeka High, but we live in the Topeka West District. My concern is that I hope that we are sensitive to the taxpayers' needs, or taxpayers that contribute to the economic development of Topeka. In June 16th of 2015, Topeka 501 approved the local option budget for to offset the costs of the school financing issue that we were facing in June of 2015. It was either increase the local option budget or consider looking at laying off staff and educators and other ancillary people that we need to run the schools. So I originally was just going to sit down and have a one-on-one with people, but then this 33-page document came out yesterday that ruled the school financing for the state of Kansas unconstitutional, which means that 501 is probably going to be looking at having to probably increase their local option budget or figure out what we're going to do for the fiscal year 2018 for the school budget. In this document, the state has given the legislators till June 30th of 2018 to figure out a school financing plan that's adequate. 501 already makes up roughly $594.80 of the tax base at a home appraised of $100,000, which is found in this document in the city budget for 2017. So with that being said, again, I would really urge you to be what's the word I'm looking for? I can't figure it out here. I just would urge you to be conscious of that with the taxpayers here in Topeka and Shawnee County, because we're already being taxed to death on just the school system alone. And we're already having to make up for the inadequacy of our school system and school district being funded by the state. So please take that into consideration when you make your decision on whether or not to go with a TIF or a CID.
Okay.
And I'm going to knock out two birds with one stone and yield my time for the next thing. We are being taxed 9.15% in the state of Kansas. To add 2 capital improvement districts in the city when we already have one, I feel like that is again a burden to the taxpayers that we don't need to add when we already have this factor that we don't know how it's going to impact 501 going forward. So, like I said, just be conscientious of that fact when you're making your decision on how it's going to impact the taxpayers in the Topeka City District.
Okay, good, thank you. Thank you for your comments. And you stated then you will not be speaking on the CID. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That completes the speakers who signed up in public comment. This is a public hearing, so we now have the opportunity for other people in the audience to come forth and visit and speak on this issue if they wish. Does anyone else wish to come forward? Yes. Okay, we have one back here. I'll call on you. I saw you first, and then we'll go over there.
Good evening. My name is Mrs. Allen.
I'm sorry, say that again so we can hear it good.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jaleigh Allen, and I live on Turnberry Court, which is on 31st and 29th, sort of back in there. But I need to perhaps give a perspective similar to Joe's. I'm a mother of 6, and I just survived my oldest at-home daughter learning to drive in Topeka. And I say that, I know.
It's not over.
Well, she's a very calm person, unlike my oldest son, who was ready to race everywhere. But I had to watch her every day leave Washburn Rural and drive to the Hummer Sportsplex, where she taught swim lessons. And every day she went through the intersection that has been so thoroughly discussed in tonight's proceedings. I have a son who's 15. Oh, help me. And he wants nothing more than to drive, and he is after us all the time. But he practices twice a day at the Hummer Sportsplex, which means he will be learning to navigate that. I have 2 more sons after him and a daughter, and they're going to be driving before I can handle it. So I know that the costs are incredible. I know they are. But I am taking my sons already through this intersection at least twice a day, from morning practice, evening practice, to the grocery store, to Ace Hardware, which is right up the road. And those of us who live in it, sir, I heard you comment, those of us who live in it do our best. But almost every day during at least one of my commutes to swim practice or back again, somebody's in an accident, almost every day. And I know financing is so hard. I'm so glad I'm not doing what you're doing. I'm just trying to get my grocery budget to work with a 15-year-old who swims. And so I don't want to waste your time, but that traffic situation is very, very critical for some of us who live right there. I know the city has grown incredibly. I know this is a difficult thing to try to figure out. I am so thrilled that that unit that you're going to fix, I am so thrilled that's going to be gone. But what I'm terribly afraid of is that the Band-Aids are not going to work for very long. Okay. And my boy's going to drive. And he won't stop swimming, and my only other option is to send him up to Wanamaker and all the way down to 6th Street through all that crazy commercial traffic over there. Those are my only 2 options. So if you guys can think about that really seriously while you're putting money aside for things, those of us who live there and really travel that would appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Wolgast and council members. I'm Sarah Anderson. I'd signed up, but I guess my name didn't get on the list tonight.
Yeah, you are on the other one, but you may speak here. But that's no, you may speak here. That is fine.
Oh, that's like me, a day late and dollar short. Okay. Well, I just want to say that in hearing everyone talk in favor of this, I get what they're saying. I've never been against this plan. I'm against where it's located because it's already it's a small area. It's tight, has already been suggested. And I just feel that it's just, I don't know, the majority of people I've talked to have said the same thing. Now, not everyone, but the majority. And I'm talking about people who really, who are familiar with Topeka, and I'm very concerned about that. I can't say it enough. We only have one road out. Fairline. That is the only road out. I would be very interested to know about Atlanta and the Kansas Power and Light District. I would like to know these other places that have these market place areas, which sound so neat, I'd like to know how many entrances they have. I'd like to know how many roads, how many ways they can get in and out. I know we can get out, but I'm very concerned about getting in. And so if it were in another place, which I know is not going to happen, evidently, but if it were, I would just be more excited about it. But I just foresee problems. And I would just give you one example of planning for something. When Southwest 29th Street was widened from Fairlawn to Wanamaker, I know they had turning lanes at Fairlawn and turning at Wanamaker. It's been so long ago, but when my mother moved there over 30 years ago, there were 4 lanes, 2 lanes going west and 2 lanes going east. I'm sure the planners thought that was going to be fine, only to find out that it started developing more than they thought. And the very plan that they had wasn't sufficient. So they made 4 lanes into 5 lanes between approximately McClure and close to Wanamaker. And if you've driven that, you know how tight it is and how dangerous it is. And now we're going to be adding more. You know, if this development goes through, it just scares me because it's already tight in there. I saw 3 accidents last Thursday at 8 o'clock on 29th Street between Wanamaker and Fairlawn. And I really believe, I know that in 2027, this part of Fairlawn Road is supposed to be looked at. I think that's too long. If we're going to, if this plan does go through, I think we're going to have to work on Fairlawn. I'm sorry, 29th Street. Again, I'm confused. But it's dangerous. I know there because my mother was there over 30 years. I've seen near misses. I've seen accidents. These are things that some of the people have not seen. And it just really concerns me. I would suggest to you, if you do this for me, that you take a drive down 29th Street from, say, 5 o'clock from Fairlawn Road and go clear to Urish Road. And when you see how it is from Wanamaker to Urish, where they did it right, and they have 5 lanes, you'll go, gosh, this is good. But it's not that way on Fairlawn. And you know, I think there's 3 things we can agree on. The space is going to be tight in the Wheatfield Village, wonderful as it is. Number 2, 29th and Fairlawn is already busy. It's going to even get busier. And the 3rd thing is that no matter what the traffic plan looks like, there's still only 1 road out. And so I would suggest to you that as good as this plan is, that you still re-examine things. There may be a better way to make this project work, not just for now, but in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. That concludes, are there other speakers who wish to speak? Seeing none, we declare the public hearing closed. I'm sorry. For this meeting, we're all finished with the public hearing. However, the public hearing will continue on November the 14th, at which time we will be making the decisions on this. Do you want to speak any more to that, Interim City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. We, in conjunction with the next item, which is the public hearing on the CID, so we anticipate having that public hearing, and then we anticipate bringing the entire suite of things for you to consider, and there's 3 or 4 things that you'll need to consider and vote upon. We anticipate bringing that on November 14th. That's your first meeting in November. We anticipate between now and then there'll be most likely be additional discussions as we complete the development agreement. We'll be able to bring that to the body for their consideration. And then ultimately, we'll want to have all those in front of you on November 14th.
Okay, fine. You have a question? Councilman Ortiz.
Mr. Mayor, don't we vote on that to move the meeting from where it was to November 14th or wherever we're trying to move it? We just...
Need a motion to continue the meeting to November 14th.
I'm sorry, I missed that. So would you state what the motion should
Yes,
state?
the motion would simply be to continue the public hearing from today's date to November 14th.
Okay, you want to move that?
So moved, yeah.
Councilman Ortiz moves that. Councilwoman DeLisla seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Oh, we're not ready?
It's done.
Ms. Ortiz?
Oh, okay.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the public hearing then will continue to the November 14th council meeting. We are at the point they'll go to item D. Generally, we take a break after 2 hours. If we'd like to let's take just a short break for about, let's make it as short as possible, no more than 10 minutes, so we can keep the meeting moving along. Okay, the meeting is back in order. We are down to agenda item D on the action items.
D is a public hearing to consider the advisability of establishing a community improvement district, a CID, for the Wheatfield Village District at 29th and Southwest Fairlawn Road and levying a CID sales tax of 2% within the CID.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As the clerk noted, the action tonight is to have to open and close a public hearing related to this topic. As noted in your agenda packet, the ordinance actually approving the establishment of this district, we anticipate bringing to you for future action on the 14th of November. So tonight, we're simply asking that you conduct the public hearing, open it and close it, and neither the city staff nor the developer have any additional comments. Those were all sort of rolled into comments from the previous agenda item. So unless there's additional questions.
All right, so, and I'll just repeat again, we're going to have a public hearing, we're going to open and close it, and then but the action on the CID will also be taken on the November 14th meeting.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Council, do you have any questions, any discussion prior to opening the hearing? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing on the establishment of a CID. And I would say most of the comments were made globally on the first round, but certainly anyone can speak on this. This is a public hearing. Seeing no one coming forth, the public hearing is closed. And that is the public hearing on the CID. And no action is necessary tonight.
No action is necessary.
All right.
Thank you.
That completes the action items other than item E that we sent down. So thank you all for being here. You can stay, but you also can leave if you wish. They don't want to speak again. They spoke earlier. They spoke the first round, and I saw them both.
Bob left.
Yeah.
He was the only one who didn't.
Yeah, there were people signed up to speak in this public hearing the second, but they all said they would not speak now. Okay, if the clerk would read item E.
E is denial of a tort claim appeal submitted by Michael Gray in the amount of $500 for damages to his vehicle from a Topeka Fire Department fire engine responding to a structure fire.
And I will turn to Councilwoman Clear.
I would move to approve the claim.
Okay, Councilwoman Clear moves to, this is the item is a denial of the tort claim of Michael Gray, which she said in the amount of $500. And Councilwoman Clear moves to that we pay the claim. Is there a second? Councilman Jensen seconds. Any discussion? Yes. Yes. That is the item. No other discussion. Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know, this is probably for legal. Does this close this once we pay this, that they can never come back with any other claims? Does this close it?
Councilmember Ortiz, before we ever pay out any money, we would require a release.
We couldn't hear you with the noise, just as you spoke.
Before we would ever pay any money out, we would require them to sign a release.
So this would be it, period?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
I guess I'm concerned. I totally understand that this seems so unfair to this person. However, I'm really concerned the precedent this could be setting. Perhaps next time someone's killed or something and it's a couple $1 million and they go back and say, you know, last year you guys approved this and as a precedent that we pay. Even in this case, I wonder if the insurance company can come back and, I don't know, maybe there's $10,000 worth of damage to this particular vehicle. The insurance company, I would think now is going to come back and say, hey, we want you to pay the $9,500 to us in addition to what you paid this gentleman.
There's an issue that this is a tort claim, and it was discussed in the executive session, and because it is a tort claim to the city, legal, can you give, we really can't discuss a claim against the city in public.
Okay.
We have to really either go into executive session, or we vote on this as it is, or if you want to discuss it in detail, I believe we have to go into executive session.
Mayor, that would be preferable if we did. We don't want to get too far into the discussion, but certainly if you'd like to discuss it more than we did several weeks ago, we could do that prior to a vote.
Okay. Councilman Ortiz.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we go into executive session for 10 minutes pertaining this tort claim.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we go into executive session. And I think we include on that, I'm looking to the city attorney, who should be here for that discussion?
Members of the governing body, the interim city manager, I believe the director of finance, and myself. Associate City Attorney Nick Jefferson is not here this evening, so it would just be continuation of the discussion that he provided, or the information he provided last time.
All right. Okay, we have a motion before us to go into executive session with those parameters.
Who made this
All those in favor, I'm sorry.
Who made the second on that?
Emerson.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor of going into executive session, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, we'll go into executive session when the room is clear. Yeah, I know.
Talk to each other, you're wrap up stuff.
Yeah. We have come out of the executive session with no action taken. As soon as other people come in the room, we will continue the meeting. Okay. We are back on the item E, the denial of the tort claim appeal, and we have a motion before the body to approve the claim. Is there any other discussion? Councilman Jensen?
Just a quick question for legal. Does the current state law forbid us from paying or just remove?
It removes the liability.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion then to approve the claim. Vote yes will be to approve the claim. Vote no will be to disapprove. Please vote. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to please, can we vote again?
Restate the motion?
Yeah, would you clear the board?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Okay, now please vote. A yes vote is to approve the claim. The motion is to approve the claim. The yes vote is to approve the claim, and no vote is to deny the claim.
Okay, Okay, we have 6 no, Clear, Ortiz, and Jensen voting yes.
6 having voted no, the motion is not approved and the claim is denied. That completes the action items for this evening. We then go to the announcements. First, we have the reading of the summary of next agenda for the council meeting.
The October 10th agenda includes a fire prevention week for a proclamation. On the consent agenda, we have a resolution for Arts Connect for First Friday, a workers' comp claim for Stephen Watkins. We have a security guard license appeal for Johnny Gore, and then we have a resolution for the Topeka Performing Arts Center fourth quarter payment. And that is it.
Okay, that sounds awfully short. We'll add something. We go to the announcements then, to the interim city manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'll just give you 2 reminders of upcoming events. First will be Boo at the Zoo, October 21st, 6 to 10, always a fun event. And then in 2 weekends from now, on October 14th, there'll be the Fire Department Memorial and Open House, and that will be at the Fire Department headquarters beginning at noon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Claire.
I have constituents call me for a variety of reasons, and usually it's concerns or ask me questions, what's going on. Occasionally, I receive those, yay, good job, glad you're doing what you're doing. This week, I received one from constituents just wanting me to know how much they appreciate TPD. They were so delighted on how they're reaching out to the community and interacting with the community. So I was impressed that someone would call and take the time to tell me that.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just really wanted to say I had a great weekend. I went downtown on Friday, went downtown on Saturday, and it was really good weather and a lot of fun. So when people say there's nothing to do, just go downtown.
And I saw you at the Hills event Friday afternoon. It was great. Fantastic. Councilman Emerson, Councilman DeLisla.
I would first like to express my appreciation to everybody that has inquired with regards to my family and everybody in Puerto Rico. Just want to say thank you for the prayers. There's still no electricity over there in my family, and there's still no water service for my family. However, they're not the only ones. There's thousands, hundreds of people without these services. So there's various ways to give and to try to get connected. We have a young man, Miguel Colon, who is a community member that is trying to get things out there. We have groups of people going ahead and sending out there. So on behalf of all of the people in Puerto Rico that are receiving your support and your prayers, I want to say thank you. Just want to call all of us for unity. Times are hard. Waking up every single day to very sad things. And I would like to not only call us all to unity but also encourage our state to take a look at what we're going to do with regards to the weapons situation. That's the one commonality that we're seeing, and I think that we have to start speaking up again, about that. And finally, wow, tonight, it was great to hear that Forge is up and going, but what a great delight to see a whole bunch of young professionals stand up tonight, regardless of the outcome of what happens. Seeing fresh faces, new faces telling us what they want to see in Topeka, and that's what we need to see more of. So I encourage the individuals that came up here that were bold enough to speak and share with us what their vision for their community is. And I'm looking forward to more of that.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen.
As a member of the Forge leadership team, I will tell you it's a fantastic group of folks that have great, great ideas for our future. I, too, want to take a moment to send my condolences out to everybody in Puerto Rico, everybody in Texas, in Florida, in Las Vegas. This fall has just been beset with tragedy in our country, and as tragic as all those are, I'm inspired by how people have come together. On the news just yesterday, I hear there are lines around the corner of people trying to donate blood just to help save a life. So, as bad as things may seem, the American spirit is just that much stronger. And I think that gets too easily lost in the face of tragedy. But to everybody out there who's suffering with that, please know our hearts and prayers are with you. On a lighter note, Saturday is the Pumpkin Palooza out at Lake Shawnee. It's to benefit the Capper Foundation. They are going to have pumpkin chunkin'. If you don't know what that is, it's a big catapult, and they're going to shoot melons. It's going to be fun. It is in the Swim Beach parking lot from 9:30 a.m. to 1. I would encourage everybody to go out there and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cohen, can you top that?
No, I won't be able to, but
don't try.
We do plan to go to that, actually. My kids are big fans of pumpkin chunkin', so seeing those guillotine or those things, throwing those trebuchets, throwing them over. I just want to point out there are a lot of shootings and violence in our community right now. It's not just all over the country, it's here. It's here. And pray for our first responders. And we plan to be at the open house for the fire department, and we attended it last year. I told you guys that we had girls' night out at Fairlawn Mall, and it was supposed to support the Ronald McDonald House, and they turned in, those volunteers turned in 200 handmade blankets. Yeah. And then Oktoberfest is coming up this weekend. So if you guys need good food, drinks, and wiener dog races, it's October 7th from 10 to 8, and the wiener dog races are at 1.
Good event.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Councilman Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to share a similar comment Councilwoman Clear shared. I received a call from an employee at Washburn who was complimenting our Topeka Police Department for their assistance in training the Washburn Police Department on crisis intervention, and they specifically mentioned Bill Cochran. And I just want to publicly announce that, and I appreciate the Topeka Police Department's efforts to coordinate and cooperate with Washburn to create a safe learning environment for our students and employees.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I too received a call from her, and it's just nice to hear it go around. And in particular, that was CIT training, which is something that our department has really concentrated on. And good grief, we sure need it. I too want to share condolences to everyone who's been affected by the unfortunate deaths here in Topeka and the violence just since we had our last council meeting. It's tragic and just kind of hard to comprehend. And for all of them, thanks to their families, their friends, and certainly to the police and the other first responders who've been involved in every one of those situations and who have intervened and cared, and to the folks that are stepping up now and observing, that they're unhappy with that situation, and in a really positive way, pledging their own commitment and encouraging all of us to step forward and make sure it doesn't happen again, not just in terms of guns, but in terms of making sure, as I think this community has, but there is always room to grow, that we're providing an environment and opportunities for our young people especially to come along. On a lighter note than that, I too am excited about the testimony that we had today and the approval that we made of 2 young professionals to bring back the East Topeka Kmart, which is just awesome. So it's nice to see good things happening.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Those are the public or the announcements. There is no public comment, so we will go to the first executive session. City Attorney would provide the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of 15 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to workers' comp, as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, Interim City Manager Doug Gerber, Financial and Administrative Services Director Nikki Lee, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Risk Manager Shannon Langston, and myself.
All right. Those are the parameters. Is there a motion to go into? Deputy Mayor Cohen moves and Councilman Emerson seconds. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, we'll go into executive session. The room is clear. We are out of the executive session with no action taken. There will be a second executive session if the city attorney would provide the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of 20 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to potential litigation as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, Interim City Manager Doug Gerber, Financial and Administrative Services Director Nikki Lee, Police Legal Counsel Luther Gagne, and myself.
All right, those are the parameters. Do you have, is there a motion? Deputy Mayor. We lock the door. We have to open the door. We can go ahead and vote. Deputy Mayor Cohen moves and Councilman Jensen seconds to go into executive session under those parameters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries.
Good luck.
Yep.
Thanks.
Luther, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
The executive session has ended with no action taken. There is a need for a third executive session if the city attorney would provide the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of 25 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to contract negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, Interim City Manager Doug Gerber, Financial Administrative Services Director Nikki Lee, Financial Advisor Jeff White, and myself.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to go into executive session? With that, Councilman Harmon moves and Councilwoman Della Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, we'll go into executive session when this room is clear. The executive session has ended with no action taken. There being no further business before the body, we are adjourned.
Liz bought